Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's workshop. We're going to be talking about the new AI ranking formula. And as you're probably already seeing in the funeral profession, there are new ways that families are searching for your services, right? This is constantly changing. And as new patterns are emerging, we have to focus our attention to what those patterns are so that we can meet our consumers where they're at, right? Especially if you're a funeral home that's already making an investment in marketing, right? If whether that's through SEO or Google Ads or even traditional methods like billboards, you really want to be where families are looking in their moments of need. So that's why we're going to be talking about this. Now, we're going to be talking about really, we're going to be talking about this, but this is really one part of an overall digital marketing strategy, really, because this is about showing up in non-paid listings where families are already searching without having to pay for every single click and every single call. But here's the thing, right? This fits into what we call the first choice framework. And the way that we look at it is that there are four big parts to this, right? First we want to, connect with more families, get more families to find you online. And then we want to really convert those people who visit your website or actually click on your profile in Google and turn that into an actual phone call, whether that's an ad need or pre-need. And next, we need to turn those one-time families into families that really will come back to your funeral home for generations, right? So we want to work with, those families that are going to advocate for us. And finally, we really just want to optimize everything, right? We want to be able to track the results. We want to know where the results are coming from, how much we're paying per phone call, and then how much are we actually paying one to get a new family to become a customer, right? So that's where most funeral homes we see are falling short. There's a lot of guesswork. But when you have your dials, the phone calls tracked, then you can start making smart data-driven decisions. So with this whole thing in place, that's how you can just really get some momentum and be smart about where you're investing your dollars. Now, as we zoom in a little closer today on the first choice framework, I want you to think about this. Everything that we're talking about here, whether that's SEO, your website tracking, all of it, is really part of a big system, okay? And these are the pieces that you need to have in place if you want to consistently have some, whether that's stability in your funeral home or if you're looking for growth. And our goal is to help you to really just stay on track, right? Whatever that goal may be. All right. Now, today we're going to focus, as you see here, there's different parts of this equation. And today we're going to focus on is the organic side, right? That means showing up in places that you're not having to pay for, right? That's what really organic means. Now, that doesn't mean that organic ads paid ads are not important. They certainly are. But for today's purpose, we're zoning in on how funeral homes can show up without having to actually pay for an ad. And that way, you can really stand out against other funeral homes and cremation services in the communities that you serve. So let's first start with a quick overview of what we'll be diving into today. We're going to look at the latest updates with the Google algorithm. That's always changing constantly. And then we're going to talk about how AI, answer engines, and AEO, or answer engine optimization, are really shaking up the market, right? Search behavior is changing fast, and it's no longer just about traditional SEO. We're going to look at some things you may have to put in place. And we also want to make sure that nothing that you have put in place in the past is going to be a liability for you going forward. So for those of you who don't know me, this is just a very quick intro. My name is Oscar Guerrero. I'm the founder of Funeral Marketing Pros. I have over 10 years of hands-on experience in all aspects of digital marketing, and that's from technical SEO to meta ads and email marketing. Now, over the years, I have helped Small to medium-sized businesses generate over $100 million in revenue. I'm also a mentor with the seven-figure agency. This is really just a mastermind where I help small marketing agencies grow into multi-million-dollar businesses. And I've been active in this industry, working closely with funeral homes and crematories. And today, I'm excited to share how you can use marketing automation, how you can use AI to grow your business. Now, more important than anything else at this point, I've had the chance to work with a lot of funeral homes and crematories, and some of in very competitive markets, right? And basically, I want to just mention this is what we do day in and day out, and we have a mission to do three main things, and that's protect your business, stay ahead of the competition, and adapt to the changing landscape. Now, when a family is in need, the first thing that they would typically turn to maybe Google, right? They would go to Google, and they would type in, funeral home near me, cremation services in their city, funeral services in their city, mortuary services, and at the very top, what we typically would have would be local service ads. Under that, we would have the Google Map listings, and then the organic listings. And also sometimes you'll find directory websites as well. And really, this has been the landscape for the past 10 to 15 years or so, all right, showing up on Google. And Google, what we have seen is as the generations have shifted on who is making the decision on what funeral home the family is going to work with next, many people, especially the Gen Xers, have been turning to Google, doing a little bit of research, and making a decision based on what they find. So now, more and more families are starting to use generative AI tools like ChatGPT and Gemini to search. Now, instead of only relying on Google, they're literally pulling out their phone and saying something like, find me a funeral home in East Alaska. And these AI tools are now serving the results. So when we look at funeral homes that are ranking well, we're starting to see them show up not only in Google Ads and Google Maps, but also recommended providers inside of ChatGPT and similar tools. And let me tell you, this isn't just hypothetical. We're already seeing funeral homes get real clicks, calls, and leads from AI searches. So this trend is only going to accelerate. Families are going to increasingly bypass Google as if they don't shift their model, which we believe that they probably will. But for the meantime, they're going to be going straight to these AI engines that they trust to get an answer. So even more common than families using ChatGPT is what we call a zero-click search now. And Google calls this AI overviews, right? This happens basically when someone searches for something like funeral costs near me or how does cremation work. And instead of showing a list of websites, Google summarizes the answer right there at the top of the page. So, families get the information that they want instantly without ever clicking through to a funeral home's website. So this is just an example. Let's say I'm in Miami today and I go to Google and ask, what's the average cost of cremation in Miami? Now, in the past, I would have clicked through to a funeral home's website, gotten the information there, and then that site would have gotten the actual traffic and that chance to actually capture my inquiry. Now, in today's market, Google's AI overview is going to summarize things, and that's going to put the answer right at the top of the search results. And that means that the user that's searching is never going to click through to the funeral home's website. This shift basically directly impacts traffic to the website. Now, when families search for things like the average cost of cremation in Miami or what to do when someone passes away, Google may now provide the full answer in the AI overview instead of sending them to your site. And this really just means fewer clicks, less traffic, and fewer opportunities to connect with the families the way that you could before. So in many industries, AI overviews have already resulted in a drop in overall website traffic. So, public data over the past year shows that there's been a decline once Google started pulling answers directly into AI summaries instead of sending users to the website. So for funeral homes, the same risk applies, right? If families get full answers to the questions like average funeral cost in their city or steps to plan a cremation directly in the AI overview, they may never get to your website. And that means that you're going to have fewer opportunities for your funeral home to capture the leads, and fewer chances to actually connect with families that are in that decision process. So how does this apply to you as a funeral home, right? Families are typing in very specific information based questions. They're asking things like, what happens at a cremation service? How long does it take to plan a funeral? What's the difference between a burial and a cremation? And in the past, if your website had strong content answering those questions, you would get that traffic. Now, that gave you the ability to then get in front of those people, influence a decision based on possibly how your funeral home looks with the pictures that you have on the website and where you have your phone number on that page and your call to action buttons. But you don't have that anymore. So with Google AI overviews, the answers are displayed like right there directly on the search results page. So this is just another example. If someone searches for what happens at a cremation service, Google can generate a summary answer without sending that family to your website. Um, Now, at the moment, this mostly affects information gathering searches, right? So rather than that direct intent search at like funeral home near me or cremation services near me, but this is growing. And we need to think strategically about how to show up in those AI overviews. So even if a family doesn't click through to your website, being referenced as a trusted source in Google's AI generated answer keeps your funeral home in the conversation and it helps build authority. So here's some specific things that we can do in these cases, right? What we're going to cover today is how to get your funeral home's website included in that Google AI overviews and ChatGPT answers. And that's really what I guess AI SEO means right now. We're going to talk about how to build branded authority so that your funeral home is recognized as a trusted source that AI tools pull from. We want to cover the basics that every funeral home needs to have in place. We want to walk through some advanced strategies that we're testing and we are working on right now. And finally, we want to unpack the new AI ranking formula, the very specific tactical things that you can do on your site and off your site to increase the probability of being recommended by Google and AI engines. And before I go on any further, I do want to make this clear, okay? AI is an opportunity. It is not a reason to panic. There is definitely potential to show up in AI recommended results, but that does not mean that your existing, like if you have been doing search engine optimization work, it's not wasted, okay? Because this is the reality. Google and YouTube together handle billions of daily searches. So Google alone drives the majority of searches where people are actively looking for a solution. ChatGPT has grown really quickly, but it's still just a fraction of Google's search volume. So more importantly, most ChatGPT queries are research based. Okay, so for funeral homes, don't abandon Google. That's the bottom line. Families still will overwhelmingly turn to Google when they need a funeral home, or when they need a cremation. AI platforms are growing, and they're important to plan for, but your foundation still should rely on visibility in Google. So let's put this into perspective. Google gets about 96 billion visits per month. YouTube gets 42 billion. And after that, you've got platforms like Facebook and Instagram. And then way down here, at just a few million, you've got ChatGPT. So again, don't panic. The scale shows us clearly that Google still dominates this search behavior. Now, AI tools matter, but they're still just a small slice compared to the Google ecosystem that really drives the majority of phone calls. Okay. Now, all of that's to say that SEO is not dead. Okay. If you're doing search engine optimization, if you are a forward thinking funeral home and you've been trying, you constantly do the work to get to the top of Google and get those calls, um, you know, this isn't about throwing out everything that you built and going all in on ChatGPT, Claude, or other AI platforms. Yes, AI search is growing, and we need to adapt, but don't ignore the foundation. Google search and SEO are still very, very important. With that being said, don't sleep on emerging AI platforms, right? The key is balance. You want to strengthen your SEO and position your funeral home to be found in AI powered search. So if we go to Google right now and type in funeral home near me or cremation services in your city, here's what most families will see, right? At the very top, you've got your local service ads and you've got your Google map. And then below those, you have the organic search results. And that could include, the funeral, your funeral home website and whatnot. This layout is still the core structure of Google search results today, and it's where the majority of families begin their journey when they're looking for a funeral home. So the latest data shows that about 71% of clicks still go to the organic listings. That's the Google Map Pack and the organic results beneath it. Now, within that, about 67% of all clicks go to the first 5 listings. So now this comes from a study and confirms what we've seen for years. If your funeral home isn't in the top spots, you're missing the majority of families who are actively searching. So let me ask you this. How does your funeral home show up? And here's what I'd like you to do right now. Just if you're watching this, go open Google, type in funeral home, and then put in your city name or cremation services, your city name. Go over to ChatGPT and ask, who would you recommend for funeral services in city name? And then try at least one more platform like Gemini, okay? And take a minute or two, run those searches for yourself, and then see if you're coming up. Are you showing up? Who is showing up, right? And just take note of that. And we're going to uncover a little bit more now. So what's powerful is when you run this exercise across multiple platforms for a variety of items like funeral home in Dallas or cremation services in Miami, you want to check how your funeral home shows up on Google, Google Maps, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and even newer tools like Grok. Okay. And ideally, your firm should be showing them on at least the first couple of results on each of these platforms. Now, in this example, you'll see how one provider is highlighted consistently across different platforms. That kind of visibility does not happen by accident. Now, you've seen some examples already, and I'll show you more as we go, but the big question is, what's the secret formula for getting ranked, right? For showing up. And let's be upfront, there's no magic button for this. Anyone who claims that they can guarantee instant rankings on ChatGPT, on Claude, Perplexity is making it up, right? Why? Because this is brand new territory. And what we're doing, just like other agencies and providers out there, is we are testing, we're learning, and we're figuring out what actually works. But here's what we know so far. Number one, first and foremost, is the answer to questions. Families are typing or speaking specific questions into Google, ChatGPT, and Gemini. And the more that your funeral home website provides clear, helpful answers to those questions, the more likely you are to be pulled into the AI results. And this is really what we feel is the secret sauce, right? Families are going into these answer engines because they have questions. That's why they're called answer engines. They deliver answers. So your role is to answer the questions families are asking, whatever those questions are, right? Cost, timelines, cremation versus burial, pre-planning. You want the content incorporated into your funeral home's website and not just as plain text. You need it formatted correctly with schema markup and clear structure so that Google, Bing, and AI tools can easily read and serve your answers. Right? The more directly and clearly that you answer these questions, the higher your chances are of being pulled into those AI generated responses that families see first. Let's get to the next slide. Now, a great way to figure out what families are actually asking is to use a tool that's called Answer the Public. You can find it just at answerthepublic.com. And what you want to do is you want to go and type in almost any term like funeral homes, and it's going to generate dozens of variations of the most common questions that families are searching. So, for example, type in funeral services, and you'll see the top frequently asked questions families type into Google. Type in cremation costs, and you'll get another list of common questions. Now, you can keep drilling down with terms like funeral planning, burial services, or pre-need. Now, the funeral homes that show up best in search get the most traffic and are really, they're increasingly being pulled into the AI answer engines. Um, are really are the ones that are consistently answering real questions, and they do it in multiple formats. You need written content, your website pages, your blogs, FAQs. Video content is good too. You can have YouTube, and you can have those videos embedded on your site, and also structured content, what we call structured content, which includes FAQ schema. So the more modalities that you use to answer, the stronger your visibility. And really, the easiest format to start with is text. Okay. You take the common questions that families ask, write clear answers, and add them to an FAQ section on your funeral home website. You can use tools like Answer the Public or even ask ChatGPT to generate sample questions. And personally, I find Answer the Public helpful because it organizes the questions more cleanly. But both approaches are they will work. Now, once you've got the text in place, then start to expand it into other formats. You can include images, graphics, infographics, visuals, videos, explain cremation, pre-planning steps, service options, all of that. Now, if you have a multi-format approach, this makes your content more engaging and more likely to be pulled into AI generated answers. So on the site itself, you know, on your website, structure matters. So, funeral homes that rank well tend to have structure like dedicated pages for each service, whether it's cremation, traditional burial, memorial services, pre-planning, dedicated pages for each city or service area that they have. Strong on-page content with keywords, a lot of visuals, FAQ sections, and of course, like I mentioned early, proper schema markup. I don't want to get too into that, but it's more of a technical stuff that a regular person wouldn't see on a website, but it exists on the back end. So there's a lot of funeral home sites that I've seen that already have some of this set up. If you're curious to know and I know that schema is extremely important. What we call schema is extremely important to this. And if you want to know if your website is set up for this, go to validator.schema.org. You see the site here in this slide. And this is a tool, and it's going to show you whether Google sees the structure of your pages and really if it sees your pages. So really that summarizes that the key is, answer family questions in multiple formats and make sure that your site structure signals that information clearly to Google and AI search engines. Now, number two. Number one was answer the questions. Number two is going to be build or become the authority. Okay. We want to make sure that your funeral home is really seen as the authority in your service area. And that means being visible not only on your website, but also on places where Google and AI engines look for trusted sources. So this is going to include publishing content on, industry sites and directories, getting featured in local media, community organizations, church bulletins, that Google already sees and considers them an authority. And then consistently just putting your funeral home's name in places where families and search engines like Google actually go to get that information. And when you build all that online authority, you increase the likelihood that your funeral home is the one that AI engines are going to pull from for answers. So let's talk a little bit about let's take a look here. YouTube. Okay. Uh, it- Google is the number one search engine. YouTube is number two. And if your funeral home isn't posting YouTube videos that answer common uh, family questions and share information, then you could be leaving some opportunity on the table. So, for example, if we search on YouTube for funeral home in a certain city or cremation services in a certain city, we see funeral homes that have short, sometimes clear videos. And they really don't need to be long, folks. Just a quick video that explains services, walking through the facility, or just has a slideshow of images with some voice is really just enough. And as we answer questions and we put out content, um, we want to have this on our blog, right? And ideally, what you're doing is you're creating content that not only lives on your funeral home's website, but also gets distributed out there and shared. And really, you're doing that again because all of this is building more authority for you. Um, And now, one of the most interesting resources for understanding how AI results are generated is a site called Profound. Now, Profound has run millions of searches across large language models and studied the sources behind the answers. And so, in other words, when ChatGPT or Gemini recommends a business, what data are they pulling from? And what the research shows is that these engines are pulling heavily from public user generated content sites. So they're looking at community platforms, review sites, directories, question and answer platforms. So if your funeral home isn't represented on these kinds of sites, or if your listings and content in those areas are weak, then you're less likely to be included in AI powered recommendations. So when we look closely at which funeral homes were being recommended in AI results, and we asked, why did you select this provider? We found really seven main criteria. And that's just, customer ratings and reviews was the number one factor. I have been doubling down on ratings and reviews for a while now. And this is one of the reasons why. The number one factor, the more reviews that you have and the stronger that they are across Google and other platforms, the higher your chances are of showing up. So ChatGPT cites reviews as the reason it recommends a provider. Don't just rely on Google reviews. That's another thing. For a long time, we have relied solely on Google reviews because we know that at-need families are searching and they're clicking on what comes up at the top of in the maps, and that's heavily influenced by the number of reviews and how interactive you are with reviews, um, and what your competition is doing. But we find that AI engines are now looking at other platforms as well. They're considering Facebook reviews, Yelp reviews. So the advice here is, if you are already ranking in the Google Maps, start to build your review profiles on other sites because these AI platforms are looking at the other sites as well. Um, how many years you claim to have in business is going to be important as well. We know with most funeral homes, it's going to be a long time, but make sure that that stands out. The next is service range. So being a full service funeral home that offers, cremation. I know not everyone has their own retort, but you offer cremation services. You should have it, front and center, along with burials and memorials and pre-planning. And really, just you want to have a thick profile on the number of services that you offer, because again, that is going to create more authority for you. Um, Calling out that you're available 24/7 is also going to be very important. I know funeral homes are, but if you have it front and center, not only in your Google business profile, but also on the website, that's going to be helpful. Now, your local presence. That really just means that, there are strong signals that you are deeply rooted in your community. I mentioned church bulletins earlier, again, local organizations, all of that, having a professional website, something modern, well structured. We highly recommend Tukios for this because they do an amazing job. And if you haven't given your website a makeover in 3 years or so, 2 to 3 years, now may be the time for that. And then any certifications, licenses, any organizations that you're affiliated with, ICCFA, NFDA, any of the local funeral director or organizations, all of that is helpful. And at the end of the day, really, if you got it all tied in together, the and if everyone is doing this, then the tiebreaker is basically trust and authority, right? So make sure that you're getting those reviews as well. So when we think about authority platforms for AI overviews and ChatGPT, the two biggest are still Reddit and YouTube. Okay. Um, if we apply the 80/20 principle, there are a few more that also matter. You've got Yelp, you've got LinkedIn, uh, Quora, and then Reddit and YouTube. Okay. So that's all I have for you today. But I want to remind you that our team is here to support you in any way to reach your goals. If you would like a free online marketing plan review, please feel free to go over to our website at funeralmarketingpros.com/strategy or call us at 855-674-1008. Thank you.